Good afternoon and welcome members of the public, officers and members of the committee to South Kesteven District Council Planning Committee on the 3rd of April 2025, and the time is just after 1 p.m. I'm Councillor Charmaine Morgan, the Chair of Planning, and I will be chairing this meeting today, and my Vice Chair, Councillor Penny Mills, is here to ably assist me. Just going through some housekeeping items first. For the fire drill, if we hear any bells go off today, then there is no drill planned, so that means that we need to follow the instructions from our fire warden, Amy Pride, who's sitting on the end here. Please vacate the building near the first fire exit, which is in that corner there, or via the central stairwell. The meeting place is on the front of St. Peter's Hill Green. Please can everyone ensure that your mobile phones are turned off or to silent. Thank you. Please be aware this meeting is being recorded and is also being live streamed via the public on South Kesteven website. Can you please ensure that your microphones are turned off when you are not speaking, and do not place your mobile phones near your microphones to avoid feedback. For members of the public here today, just to be aware that there are public toilets just outside should you need them, and we do have some water which you're welcome to help yourself to in the corner there. We have with us today Councillor Phil Dilks, Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning. Welcome, Phil. And we have for our officers our Assistant Director of Planning and Growth, Emma Whittaker, Development Manager, Phil Jordan, Principal Development Manager, Adam Murray, and Planning Officer, Kevin Cartwright. Thank you. From Legal Services, we have with us Paul Weeks, and Amy Pride is our Democratic Service Officer as well as our Fire Warden. So thank you for the work you do there, Amy. Public speakers and ward councillors for the applications being heard today, please be aware that you have 3 minutes to speak and you will be advised when you have 30 seconds left. You may finish your sentence but not another paragraph. And I will now hand over to Penny, who will read out the list of speakers in the order in which you would be invited to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, application reference S241842, proposed demolition of existing buildings and erection of a new 66-bed care home for elderly people at the Woodlands, Tarragon Way, Bourne. District Ward Councillor, Councillor Helen Crawford. Against, Matthew Barber and the applicant Joe Kemp. Agenda item 5, application reference S241681, application for the approval of reserved matters relating to access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale for convenience store as part of a local centre pursuant to outline planning permission, land to the west of Penryn Way, Poplar Farm, Grantham, and the applicants are sharing, that is Stuart Bisley and William Lee, Buckminster. Okay. Agenda item 6, application reference S242106, installation of air source heat pumps and evaporator decks, erection of timber fencing to the rear of the main leisure centre building with the Grantham Mears Leisure Centre on Trent Road in Grantham. No speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. So we now move on to the main agenda and item 1. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillors Paul Wood, Vanessa Smith and Gloria Johnson, and Councillor Max Sawyer will be substituting for Councillor Vanessa Smith today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any disclosure of interest for consideration? Councillor Crawford?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's item 4. which is in my ward. Therefore, I will not, and I'm speaking obviously, so therefore I will not take part in the debate or the vote. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ellis? Thank you very much for that. I have a disclosure of interest as well for application S242106, item 6. With regards to item 6 of the agenda, I make a declaration on behalf of all members that whilst it is acknowledged the applicant is the council, this will not affect how members of the planning committee determine the application. All members have been trained and will determine the application in accordance with their planning training and with an open mind. Any member who does not feel they are open-minded to determine the application today should make a declaration to that effect and not vote on the application. We will now move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of March 2025. I noticed that there is actually a small amendment, and that is that Councillor Phil Dilks is not actually a member of the committee. It's actually recorded twice as attending, both in his cabinet role and also as a member, and I understand that that's to be corrected. Is that right?
Yeah, just to confirm, the online minutes have been amended. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So, does anyone have any comments regarding the minutes? Well, fine. In that case, may I have a proposer, please, for the minutes? Thank you. Councillor Ellis, and a seconder, Councillor Trotter. Thank you. So, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. And any against? Yeah, thank you very much. I was going to ask for abstentions, so thank you. So, just checking that's 2 abstentions. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So those minutes have been approved. And we now move forward to agenda item 4, which is S241842. It's the proposed demolition of existing buildings and the erection of a new 66-bed care home for the elderly. And our officer, Kevin Cartwright, will talk through this for us.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the proposal relates to the construction of a 66-bed care home following the demolition of the existing dwelling. The proposal would be accessed from Coriander Drive, which abuts the application site to the west. The application site is a large plot with well-maintained grounds. The care home will be located roughly centrally within the site. There's just some slides here just of the existing dwelling that would be demolished. So the care home will be located roughly centrally within the site, and will have a H layout with the accommodation in the form of wings sort of set around a central communal dining area. There will be car parking to the north of the building, providing 30 spaces. The building will be predominantly formed of traditional brickwork and tile construction. Just some slides showing the elevations of the proposal. Then we've got the floor plans, as I say, showing the wings and the central communal area. There are a number of ornamental trees on the site that will be lost to facilitate the development. However, it should be noted that there are extensive landscaping as part of the proposal around the site, including the planting of 95 trees and hedgerows to both help assimilate the proposal into the surroundings, but also to provide an attractive environment for the future occupiers. The applicant has also provided a site setup plan which illustrates how it envisages that the build would take place, with the construction parking on the north of the application site and cabins etc. located on the existing hard standing on the site. Additionally, the applicants provided some 3D impressions of what the proposal would look like, the top one being taken from the cul-de-sac on Coriander Drive, and the other one taken from Tarragon Way. The site photos were taken from Tarragon Way, looking into the site. That's where the existing access is, where the white cars parked, and that's just taken along the frontage of the site. And the bottom slide on the left-hand side is the existing dwelling, and on the right-hand side is taken from within the site, looking back towards Coriander Drive, where the access would be from. Got some other photographs there, just taken along various vantage points along Coriander Way and Tarragon Way. Coriander Drive and Tarragon Way. That would be the route into the site. The key issues are the principle of the development, amenity impacts, and highway safety. The proposal would create a 66-bed care home in a sustainable location within Bourne. And as you see from the main body of the report, there is an identified need of between 37 and 65 additional bed spaces per annum over the 25-year period for the district. From an amenity perspective, there will be a similar relationship between the neighbouring properties as currently exists, whilst accepting that the proposed building is larger than what currently occupies the site. There will be adequate separation distances to ensure no significant overlooking, loss of privacy, or overshadowing from the proposal. It is accepted there will be an increase in trips to and from the site when compared to that of a single dwelling, also accepting that the current dwelling isn't accessed through Coriander Drive, it is accessed directly onto Tarragon Way. However, it's considered that there will be, due to the fact that there will be unrestricted visiting hours, the visitors will be dispersed. It's anticipated that there will be a single delivery vehicle per day providing foodstuffs and perishables to the care home once operational. In relation to any noise and disturbance during the construction phase, Condition 3 requires the submission of a demolition, construction and management plan. From a highway safety perspective, it should be noted that the Highway Authority has not raised any objection to the proposal, subject to the conditions requiring the upgrading of various pedestrian crossing points in the vicinity and the closure of the existing access. In relation to other matters, as we can see from the main body of the report, there's been a number of representations in relation to exploring the alternative access and whether it needs to be accessed through Coriander rather than directly onto Tarragon Way. The applicants have provided some discussion on this matter and provided a commentary that access directly onto Tarragon Way would actually require access over third-party land that they don't have a right over. The land in question is currently owned by Barrett David Wilson Homes, and it's residual land which was remained from the wider Tarragon Way development. And any right of access over that was not granted to any subsequent successors in title. So as such, they don't have a right to go on Tarragon Way, onto Tarragon Way directly. That's been also backed up by a legal opinion acting on behalf of the applicants, confirming that that assessment is correct. The officer's recommendation is in the main body of the report, and it is to grant planning permission subject to the completion of the Section 106 agreement to secure the contribution to healthcare and the rest of the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. If we can please have our first speaker, who is District Ward Councillor, Councillor Helen Crawford. You will have 3 minutes if you want to let us know when you're ready to speak. Thank you, and you'll have a 30-second warning.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good afternoon. This will be like me, short and sweet. This came to Bourne Town Council and the majority of residents had no issue with the location of the care home, but it was the egress and parking. For me, this is an ideal location. I am saddened to read that basically there is a ransom strip of land which could have been used, would have been ideal for the entrance to the site. Shame on those who own the ransom strip for not allowing the use for the benefit of former customers. I still have concerns with the entrance on Coriander Drive with the residents who park and the additional HGVs that will have to go through that part of the estate. I also do not think that there is enough parking, as I would hate for the future for visitors and workers end up parking on the estate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Can you tell me what is the state of the on-road parking in that area at the moment?
Sorry, people do have drives, but there's still quite a few people park along Tarragon Way to the entrance to Coriander Drive. So, okay, if they say they're going to have one delivery of 7.5 tonne a day, that should be okay. But the HGVs, when it's demolition, when they're building, that's what I have a huge concern over. I don't think if there's everybody's parking legally, but I do wonder if the HGVs and everything would get round.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Helen, can you expand on the ransom strip? Any more information about it?
Sorry, it's just what Kevin said. There's a strip of land which used to be the former entrance to the site for the people that owned that. Years ago, that estate was all greenhouses. So then they obviously sold the land, and then, but the strip of land which they could use to get backwards and forwards into their house and home has not been allowed for this development, because obviously the developers kept that, possibly knowing what the future may hold. So, you know, it's a shame, because that would have been the ideal entrance for the site.
Is there no indication they may be prepared to change their mind on that?
I believe they have tried, but they have declined.
Thank you. Councillor Trotter.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Helen. I read, obviously, on page 32 that Coriander Drive is an existing cul-de-sac. With your local knowledge, how long has it been a cul-de-sac and the residents known it as a cul-de-sac?
Since it was built, and I can't for the life of me think how long ago, but it must be 19, 20 years that the estate's been there, I would have thought. Sorry? 23. I stand corrected.
So I'm right in thinking that people who've moved there have chosen it because it's a cul-de-sac, and I think it says that obviously this is going to be the main access point. Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would have thought yes, but like many estates where you have leads to, where they put in that in future they expect that an estate might go this way and that way, but it has been a cul-de-sac for 23 years, and that's what you're used to, I suppose.
Yeah, and just need to be careful about not speculating about what people might be thinking, just to be wary of that. Thank you. Councillor Ferrers, did you have your hand up?
Just a point of information, but I'll address that when we come to debate about particular cut-off period.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bishnal Singh.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for your presentation. Can I ask, there's another piece of land inside that's obviously that is at the moment empty. It's a very big piece of land, and that will probably eventually be developed on, and that road, that cul-de-sac, will be used as the main entrance to service the other houses. So surely the increase of traffic, or will that be an alternative entrance to that side?
As we all know, you can only discuss what is marked in red, so I don't think I can answer that one, because I can't see what the future holds, and we can only discuss and debate what is in the red line of the application, if I'm correct.
That's correct. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? No? That's lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. If we could now have Matthew Barber. If Matthew would like to come forward, please. And again, you will have 3 minutes and you'll have a 30-second warning. Thank you. If you just want to let us know when you're ready to roll.
Shall I start again? That's better. So, it's Matthew Barber. I've lived in the estate for 23 years on Coriander Drive. We'll talk about the southern entrance first. It's off Exeter Street, small roundabout. It's a hazardous spot. As you walk in, probably about 15 metres in, there's the current entry point, which obviously Councillor Crawford has spoken about. L&T have advised that they were able to get that land access point due to them having no legal right over it. I think my proposal before or if planning's granted is that can we go back to David Wilson Barrett Homes and see whether we can have it for 4 or 5 months purely for the build phase, because putting all the construction traffic through Tarragon Way and hence into Coriander Drive is not going to be great. So if we can go through to the next one. So this is the bottom of Tarragon Way, T-junction, and then you turn right up to Tarragon Way, thank you. And in reality, this is Coriander Drive. On the right-hand side, leading up to it, always 6 cars parked there. Admittedly, not so many during the day, but they are there, and they overflow up further down Coriander Drive. In Coriander Drive, we have 7 properties, 9 car parking spaces, and 18 cars owned by the residents. My major concern there is that we've all parked on the driveways where possible. If not, we spill out onto the estate. The paths are narrow, they're uneven, and you've got to bear in mind this will be the only access into the care home and out of it. So residents from the care home wanting to leave on mobility scooters, walkers, will have to navigate those 2 pathways. Once they got to the end, they'll have to go around Tarragon Way all the way back to the driveway. My fear is that when we're pulling off the driveways, we've never had to look at the care home before or that way, and we'll just be pulling out looking right as we always have done. So there is the potential for an accident and a serious health and safety risk there. So all in all, I guess to summarise, because I must be running out of time, if access can be granted for a period of time for the initial build phase, so that all the heavy construction traffic, the skips, the lorries and all that could enter there for 3 or 4 months, it'd be bricked up, and obviously Coriander Drive, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to park?
30 seconds.
Cool. So I think if the proposal is granted, we really need to think about the parking issues in Coriander Drive. There's no current plan to amend any of the network of roads, pathways, and I've lived there 23 years, and believe you me, it's not easy to cross the roads. The bin lorries always leave the black bins in the roads. I've seen mobility scooters have to mount down the curve and then obviously go round on the main road. So all in all, I think the residents and myself were clearly objecting to the approval of the care home. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Sawyer?
I'm going back to the ransom strip again. I find this quite interesting. If it became available, am I right that a lot of the objections would be addressed?
100%. I think 99.9% of the, obviously, residents would not mind the care home. Obviously, it wouldn't be ideal because it's going to increase the traffic flow into the obviously estate. But yeah, we're not against. We'd rather have a care home there for certain than a number of houses there. So yes, in answer to your question.
Thank you. Sorry, I understand Emma would like to say something.
Thank you. I think the gentleman is probably only qualified to answer that question from his perspective and not on behalf of the other residents. But the other thing we've got to bear in mind, as interesting as the Vanson Strip may be, and an alternative scheme may be, the role of the committee today is to determine the application in front of it. And the question really is the access that's proposed suitable or not? Not is there a better or different access that could be utilised if there was a different scenario in front of us. So, yeah, I think we'll just leave it there for a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else? Councillor Bird.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, again, you can only answer on your own behalf, but the issue of the access and the volume of potential traffic as cars and bigger lorries, even during the operation of the care home, is it the health and safety, or is it the overall impact on the amenity of the residents from your point of view, from the residents that you were most concerned about? Thank you.
For me, I'm on the very end house of Coriander Drive, and having, for I think it was a 12-month build period, having obviously in those initial stages, having all the big trucks and lorries going down there where we're trying to, obviously the 18 cars or the 9 car parking spaces, we're trying to sort of like reverse on and off and on and off, and often, yeah, it's just going to be hellish. It really is for that period of time. I think once I got through the build stage, from my perspective, I'd be more than happy for the care home to be there. It's just the roads and obviously Coriander Drive, it is not suitable for, from my perspective, a construction site.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just go back, and maybe we could have a look at the photo again of the cars on Coriander Way. Now, you did give a figure there of roughly how many vehicles, because I'm just having a look here, and there's actually 7 residences, I think, on Coriander Way. Is that correct?
Well, there's 7 properties, 2 to the left,
yeah,
detached, and there's a row of 5 townhouses
yeah.
to the left. I mean, initially they all had 1 driveway. We obviously have 2, and the neighbour next to us have 2. So some of them have converted their single driveway into a double, and that's a quiet day. I mean, weekends, I came home the other week and my son was having a party and the whole road was blocked with cars, and they were all overflowing into the right access there, and that is the picture every day. Every day my wife returns from work, she's greeted with 5 cars. Every day she goes to work, it's a blind access, so we have to just take a chance and pull out. So hopefully that answers your question.
You'll have to follow up, I understand.
So I think it's safe to say that even with only 2 cars per property, you're looking at least 14 there, but you're saying, I think you said 16, was it 16?
There are currently 18 cars. Could be going shortly to 19 if my son passes his driving test.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Fellows.
Yeah, hello, Matt. Hopefully your son will pass his driving test. Excuse me for going down this particular route, but if you look at the photograph, it's a double entrance gate leading into the proposed site. When you moved in, were you aware of the fact that that was a potential access point for development, or has that come as a complete surprise to you?
Well, when we moved in 23 years ago, it was our first house, so we were pleased to be there. And no, we weren't aware at that point. We knew that the land was fairly large. I think after we'd been in there 6 months, we all thought it could be a distinct possibility that land would go to housing. But yes, the only reason that gate was there was to let the landowners allow for him to go through them, to pick up his skip full of all his garden waste and drive out, and that was probably once every 6 months. And then recently the gardeners have been using that to cut the grounds at the back. The front one's done by a current friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? No. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for going easy on me.
If I can now call forward the applicant, Joe Kemp. If you'd like to come forward, please. And you'll have 3 minutes and a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Good afternoon. L&T is the UK's leading care home developer, and we've built and operated approximately 250 care homes nationwide. What makes us different from any other developer is the experience that we gain from also being an award-winning care home operator. I appreciate there is a desire for us to use the existing access into the site off Tarragon Way, as we've spoken about. However, as you've heard, this driveway unfortunately crosses land which is outside our ownership, and we, despite our best efforts, cannot get the legal right-of-way over it. Obviously, we've proposed to utilise the Coriander Drive access instead, to which the Highways Authority have no objection. The care home would also benefit from 30 parking spaces, and as most of our operational homes of this size have 25 spaces, we are confident that 30 will be more than enough. There will be up to 24 members of staff on site at the busiest part of the day, which is over the lunchtime shift, and the shifts are staggered to avoid busy changeovers. Staff generally come from within the local area, and residents will also come from or have family within the same locality, which means visitors and staff are more likely to travel sustainably to visit the home. Visiting hours are unrestricted, and most visitors tend to arrive in the evenings when there are less staff on shift, so more parking spaces are therefore available. To help combat climate change and reduce running costs, over 70% of the home's energy will come from on-site renewables, including a battery store to store surplus energy for future use. The external appearance of the home has been designed to assimilate with its residential setting, maintaining privacy to neighbouring properties and benefiting from generous landscaped gardens. Every single feature of the building is specifically designed around enabling the delivery of great care. The development would also generate significant employment, with 50 to 60 jobs being created for local candidates. It would provide a multi-million-pound investment into the area and become a key part of the local community, forming links with schools and community groups, as well as business opportunities for local contractors and suppliers, which will last well beyond the construction phase. We know from experience how reassuring it can be to move from an empty house into a warm, caring environment, and the proposed layout of the home ensures that residents can access all the facilities and be part of the community that we create at the heart of the home. We are passionate. Thank you. We are passionate about the value a great care home brings to a community, providing a home and a greater quality of life for the 66 local residents in need of care. Finally, we would really welcome the opportunity to become part of the community in Bourne, and myself and my two colleagues are more than happy to answer any questions that you might have for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Trotter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is a great idea, great. But just looking here at the plans and the layout, did you give, looking at that roundabout on Exeter, Exeter Street and Tarragon Way, there is room to go directly off that, even taking into account looking at the drainage and the street lighting, there is room to get an access road in off there. Did you give any consideration to that when you were looking at this?
We did actually, yes. So I think if you look historically, I think the house was originally accessed from that point. But I think when you look, and I've not got the plan in front of me, so forgive me, I'm going from memory, but there is still a strip of land in between the application site and the back of the highway. So that was suggested to us earlier on in the application process, but unfortunately, again, it's still that part of that same strip of land under the alternative ownership, unfortunately. Because we also looked at potentially doing a pedestrian access there, but again, same applies.
Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. According to mine, unless there's a very minute, when I zoom in, yeah, I see what you mean there. There's a very, like a pathway size, isn't there? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trotter.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hi, Joe. My only question is, has it only been posed to David Wilson about permanent access? Obviously, you heard the previous speaker. Would it be feasible, or would it be worth your while, or have you already asked for temporary building access? Thank you.
I think that we'd asked for any kind of access and we weren't able to get it. But what I might do, if it's okay to defer this to a colleague, he's a little bit more versed in this. Jonathan, are you able to comment, please?
Yeah, I will allow that because it is quite an important point. So do you want to, can you come forward, please?
Yeah, hi there. So, in terms of the approach we've made, I think historically that has been seen as almost POS land, and it's been preserved as such for that. So, and actually, to your point, sir, in terms of the historic development, the intention was that Coriander Drive would serve as an access point, and there's drainage been installed underneath Coriander Drive for us to plug into directly. So, the approach would be sort of a bit strange from BDW's point of view, because the historic position was always that Coriander Drive was intended to access that plot for future development. So, unfortunately, legally, we can't commit to going through what is seen as the existing access. We have tried, trust me, we've tried, extensively, because otherwise, to the gentleman's point there, we'd have overcome the main objection. But I think, unfortunately, in this instance, it is a third-party ransom strip, and it's not that we're not willing to pay. I don't want that to be seen as this is just us trying to save money. I think the principle has always been that piece of land was preserved for POS land, and therefore that's why there's no rights been preserved to access the plot that we're looking at.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Does anybody else have a question? Oh, Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. Actually, I've got two, but if I just do the first one, have you been made aware of the residents' concerns over the loss of the driveway as a parking option? And has there been any discussion about creating an additional bit of parking land or allowing some spaces within the development for the use of the residents there?
We have been made aware of it through the objections, obviously, to the application. We're more than happy to work with the residents. I know I've spoken to Matt at the public consultation event that we held. The problem, I think, is that there isn't really much room on site. We don't own the northern plot. I know one of the councillors had queried what was happening with that previously. So actually, in terms of space on site, there isn't really much room for us to provide anything. But I think in terms of the sort of day-to-day management during the construction, we would be willing to perhaps look at some temporary parking. We've arranged some for ourselves in the north for the temporary construction phase. So it might be that in the evenings we could come to some sort of informal arrangement on that, if that were any help. But I think lack of space really on the site is probably where we're going to struggle, I think, to help out there.
Sorry, just one point I suppose that we'd also just pick up on is, I think historically where we've been developed in residential areas, we make sure that we liaise with the local community. We give the phone number of our site manager to the member of the local community to discuss these issues throughout the construction phase, to make sure that any major deliveries are sort of signposted very well in advance. People can have the opportunity to make sure they're not parked in the way and things like that. So we're not, we do take our responsibilities very seriously, and we'd be more than happy to and willing to engage with the local community through that construction phase.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sawyer. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Councillor Bird, you had a follow-up.
Second, yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just aware that you had also said that you'd got probably about an extra 5 spaces over your normal amount, so that I did wonder if there was additional. So that was that one. The second question is not about parking or access. I did the site visit, and I was very struck by how beautiful the site is and how well maintained, and there are quite a number of mature, healthy specimen trees, and I'm really concerned about the prospect of cutting several of those down by the look of it, and it feels just very destructive of healthy trees. Are you able to tell us how many of that beautiful landscape and those trees are actually going to be removed in this process?
I might have to refer you to our planning officer just to check the numbers. I don't know if you have them. Is it 20? Yeah, but we're planting 95. Appreciate what you're saying. It's not nice to lose an established tree, and actually where we can and where they're healthy enough, we'd always try and relocate them. But obviously, unfortunately, if it's not possible, sometimes there is some that are lost. But like I say, we always replant plenty more, hopefully to mitigate.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sawyer and then Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm picking up on the point that Councillor Harrison made about the narrow strip by the roundabout. That includes the narrowest part of the land in question. How wide is that? To me, on the map, it looks only a few metres.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Sawyer. I think we've laboured that particular point rather a lot, and it is a ransom strip. It wouldn't matter if it was 3 feet or
yeah, I mean, I can just clarify
20. We'd still have a problem.
There is a gap between the adopted highway and the red line for the legal ownership, so it is narrow, but.
Sorry, I think we've touched it about 5 times, that subject now. Thank you. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chairman. During the construction phase, is there a limit on the size of the vehicles that you'll need to get in, or will you need to get articulated lorries down there?
On a normal construction site where there's no access limitations, we would use articulated lorries, but in this instance, or any instance where we're going through a residential estate, we would always limit them to a rigid vehicle, which I'm not particularly au fait on my HGVs or other goods vehicles, but I believe they're a bit smaller, and as Jonathan had said, the site manager will directly liaise with residents if needs be on a day something bigger has to come, and we'll sort of manage it that way so that we're causing the minimal amount of disruption that we can.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? No. Actually, I had one, if I may, and that was relating to the construction phase. We haven't such got the full details, it just refers to a separate construction plan, but would there be proper management regarding the potential mud and any debris on the road and leading to and from the site? Is that part of that?
Yes, it is in the construction management plan, which I believe will be conditioned as well. We commit to having a wheel wash on site. We try and do dust management techniques when it's dry weather, and any vehicle leaving the site will have a wheel wash, and we also bring in a road sweeper when either daily or weekly or as it's needed.
Thank you. I had another question, if I may, and I appreciate that with care homes you can have quite a few ambulances needing to, sadly, but it's just a fact of life. Have you looked at if your car park is full, that you've still got room for the manoeuvrability of ambulances and potentially fire engine? Has that been considered?
Yes, there is an ambulance bay or drop-off area outside the main entrance. I think on the site plan it might be shown hatched, so it's clear that it's not for parking. And there is also a turning area. We've done some vehicle tracking for like a sweat path analysis for a refuse vehicle, which I believe is bigger or the same size as a fire tender. So to pass the fire regulations, we have to make sure that we can get a fire tender to site. So, yeah.
Thank you, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Does anybody else have a question? No, I think that's it. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sawyer.
To pick up Councillor Bird's point about the trees, I've just been looking on the internet. It is possible to move fairly large trees up to about 30 feet high. Have you investigated that as a possibility? I accept there is a cost. Apparently it's between £1,000 and £5,000 per tree. Is that something you have looked at as an alternative to cutting the trees down?
Thank you. Yes, I did actually comment to Councillor Bird. We have actually done that before on sites previously. So if it's possible, if there is a particular specimen that we want to and we think is possible to move, we can look into that. I think it depends upon the tree. I'm no arborist, unfortunately, but yeah, we would take arboricultural advice, and if that is possible, then yes, by all means, we can look into it.
Thank you. Councillor Bird, you had and I think I'll make this the last question, if that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, no, thank you. There was reference to generating renewable energy. I wonder if you could just give us a little, and in fact battery storage. I wonder if you could just give us a little bit. I'm sure it's in the documentation, but just for everybody's sake, just a little bit more explanation about how much and how we're going to sort of harvest that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so we have PV panels on the roof, which are actually integral to the roof, so they form the part of the roof covering rather than standing proud. And between them and ground source heat pumps, we generate over 70% of the home's energy from renewable sources. We have a battery store, which is shown on the site plan, quite close to the site entrance, I think. And that basically stores any surplus energy that we're not using, so that when during solar panels, for example, aren't generating as much power on a grey day, we can pull our energy from the battery rather than from the grid. So we're nearly sort of up to the point where we could be off grid, but not quite, nearly there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you. So we'll now move on to debate, and you are welcome to also ask questions of our officer at this stage. Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this application. There's a big element of me that doesn't want to, because the house that's been pulled down is an absolutely beautiful house. But we are where we are. From conversations I've had with Matt, one of the speakers earlier as well, there is no real objection to the plan itself, for the care home, for its situation, for everything that the company are putting into it. And I do believe they're going above and beyond what sometimes we might expect. The care home as planned seems to tick so many boxes, so that leaves us just to the access. And as we have considered and debated and gone into, that really is the only access point. I believe that was always intended to be another access point for further development. But that is not really what we're allowed to talk about. So, as the plan stands, I feel no objection to it. I hear the company is going to do some sort of planning, some sort of management plan for the building. From what I've heard today, I'm satisfied that they will do that with the greatest rigour and try and make it as painless as possible. But again, I have empathy but not sympathy about residents parking cars. It's an argument we could have across the whole of our area. So I really have no objection to this plan, and I would propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. If I can pause that for a moment and just give folk a chance to have a bit more of a say, and I may well come back to you. Thank you. Councillor Vishnu Singh, and then Councillor Ellis, and then Councillor Harrison. Was that, and also Councillor Trotter? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This application, reading through it, it's actually pleased me to know, and seeing that it is more or less energy self-sufficient, using green energy. And I'm very much for it, practically for all the things that's going on. One question that I would like, I could not find it anywhere, probably Kevin will be able to tell us, is there a management plan for during constructions? What is the time when it will, in the morning it starts, and what time does it close? Because seeing the site in the middle of a residential area, so I'm a bit concerned about that.
Through you, Chair, yeah, there is a construction management plan. It is conditioned, so we would be requesting details of that, including the hours of operation, hours of demolition, construction, etc. No.
Will it be possible to ask that if that the work doesn't start before 7 o'clock and finish by 6 o'clock?
Yeah, through you, Chair. As part of when they submit the details in relation to that condition, we obviously liaise with our environmental protection team in relation to noise and disturbance and impact on amenity. So, we consult with them, and they have, they recognise what are suitable hours of working, etc. So we would ensure that the amenity of neighbouring occupiers would be adequately protected.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. It is in relation to the trees. I believe in the opening description we were told that they were ornamental trees, and I'm not sure whether that means that they're native trees, and would therefore, if that's not the case and they're going to be replaced by native trees, then I think that mitigates the loss of the number of trees, and given that the numbers that are being replaced are greatly in excess of the ones that are being removed, I don't see that as an issue. Again, welcome the 70% energy renewable phase of this, and on balance, I think I wouldn't see myself going against this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I totally agree with Councillor Fellows. I sympathise with the residents that they've had this their own way for quite a long time, but I think looking at it, it's quite obvious that sometime that was going to become an entrance to another housing development or whatever. It was going to become an entrance. I am of a mind to second Councillor Fellows, but I would ask that the developers show some sympathy towards the residents on there, and maybe at least during the construction phase allow extra space where the residents can probably move the cars off the road to allow for better egress and whatnot of the construction traffic.
Yes, thank you for that. That is a very good point, actually. Just from a practical point of view, they won't get the HGVs down there if the residents can't park anywhere other than the way they are at the moment, semi on the road. That's a consideration. Yeah, so I'll just let Councillor Trotter speak, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Mills. So, Councillor Trotter.
Yeah, thank you. I think Councillor Ellis satisfied my mind a bit. Kevin, I just want to be 100% sure that all the trees that are there are ornamental. Get my words out. But the last thing I'd want is for established trees to be taken out for building. I know Joe was very, very kind and said if they needed, moving, it could be done. Are you absolutely 100% that they're ornamental trees? Because we have got a tree officer, obviously.
I can't categorically say that. Well, I don't know. I don't think that. Is there an accepted definition of what an ornamental tree is? Possibly not. I think it was more that they are currently within a residential curtilage, so they are of trees of that sort of size. They're not. As part of the replacement planting scheme, we're talking about a number of extra heavy standard trees that go in at 4 metres height. The rest are standard trees that go in at 3 metres height. And they will become quite sizable established trees over a period of time. Whereas I think the ones, when I looked at on the site visit, are sort of quite modest trees that you would be appropriate for a sort of garden location. I think these are going to, you know, the 95 replacement trees are going to be quite substantial. I think it's probably going to be, you know, there's going to be a net benefit from the landscaping. But I can't categorically sit here and say to you that there are what we term ornamental trees. That we are going to lose some trees, but we are going to get, you know, you get an awful lot of replacement planting as an alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Mill, and then Councillor Sawyer.
Yes, thank you. Just following on from what Councillor Harrison said, can you just confirm that when you consider the construction plan, when it comes forward as part of the condition, that everything that's been said today as a form of concern will be considered? I know you say you ask environmental protection, but I'm sure you've heard quite a lot of concerns today to include in a plan.
Sorry guys, can I just check, because obviously we are being recorded and you seem to, do you need a 5-minute recess just to discuss a matter? I'm going to take that as a yes. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us. It seemed we needed to resolve a matter regarding the construction plan, and it's my understanding that the recommendation is that we have actually received a plan. It isn't actually in the pipeline, we've actually had one. However, if we accept the plan that's before us today, then we can't include the points that have been raised by the committee, so therefore the recommendation would be that we actually request a new plan which does take into account the concerns that have been raised. So when we move forward, we'll make sure that we pick that up. And thank you for persevering with us. And I have to apologise because I'm not sure if I covered all my speakers off. Sarah, you were the last one. Councillor Trotter, you did get to raise your question about the trees, didn't you? Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Trees again. Would it be an idea to have a full report from our tree officer on each of the 20 trees with a view to identifying which it would be reasonable to consider moving rather than felling?
Can I just refer that to Emma?
We don't actually have a tree officer currently employed in the planning team. We do have an officer in another team that is lending us some support. I'm not convinced that that's a good use of resources. And I don't know if Kev, whether you can advise whether or not the tree officer has looked at the information that's come in, but It is difficult when you remove trees because you've got to do an awful lot of preparation work in terms of the new planting pitch. You've got to look after the trees, so it's not always advisable to try and transplant trees, particularly if they're a sizeable stock. I know it's technically possible, but it's not the easiest. And none of the trees currently have a tree preservation order as it currently stands. But I don't know if Kev wants to just add anything about whether or not the we've had a survey that's been looked at. Thank you.
A comprehensive tree survey did accompany the report. Did accompany the application. I haven't had any specific comments from our tree officer on that report, but it is a reputable report undertaken by technical experts in that particular field. The trees, by the nature that are being removed, are only the ones that are necessary to facilitate the development. They're the ones within, almost within the footprint of the proposed building. There are some other trees on the site that are being retained, and there are identified root protection areas around those trees and the hedgerows that are being retained. In relation to the suitability of the trees to be transplanted, as I say, I can't really provide any advice on that matter, unfortunately.
Thank you. Chief, if I could come back. First of all, with regards to the trees, I think Councillor Ellis made a very valid point, which is actually if they are native trees, they are actually much better for our wildlife, in fact, than ornamental trees. And I did actually, just so you know, separately raise a question with our officers prior to this meeting, because I was also concerned about the trees and was advised that we're not getting tiny, like 5-foot trees going in, that the trees that are going to be planted will be a substantial size. Which is encouraging to hear in the first instance. We don't always get that, and it's a significant number of them. So it's certainly my opinion that I hate losing any trees. The fact that we will get so many new trees and of native species and of a good size, to me, overcomes any negative we might have with the loss of some trees with the build footprint. If I might raise a point which hasn't particularly been discussed, but again, I did discuss with our officers before the meeting, and that was picking up the residents' concerns around vehicle movements. And it has been put forward that staff might ultimately in future be sharing cars and they might get public transport, etc. We can boost that by requesting a travel plan as a condition as part of the application as well. So I'm minded to recommend that we do that as well to try and help reduce some of the movement going in and out of that site. If members are happy for me to do that, to propose that. Councillor Bellamy.
I think in the report, like I said, I did see about the delivery vehicle, size of the delivery vehicle, but nothing from the construction phase. And I think it would be unreasonable to try and get articulated lorries down that. The actual road going into Coriander, is it street or way, whatever it's called? Like I say, that is quite wide, but the Tarragon way is quite a narrow street, and I think it'd be, like I say, I think it'd be unreasonable to have large articulated lorries going down there.
May I ask a question of Emma? When it comes to the actual construction plan itself, is that something that we could, even if it's delegated to yourself, perhaps myself and Penny, to look at? Can we do that, the draft version of that?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sure we can do that. That shouldn't be a problem. Just looking at the Google Street View, it looks like Coriander Drive looks like a normal width road to me. But yeah, we can absolutely share details of the construction management plan when it comes in.
Thank you very much. I think that might reassure members, and we can share that. Thank you. So, Councillor Bird, was it? Were you
no, I was
just
just going to follow up. Like I say, it was quite evident on the site visit that the Tarragon Way did seem to be narrower than the Coriander. So.
Coriander Drive.
Coriander Drive. So.
Thank you. And Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to quickly return to the green stuff. The report identifies that a biodiversity net gain plan is provided. Where are we up to with that? Is there a proposal to provide the net gain on site despite sort of removing trees and green, or is it the plan to buy units and manage them off site? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It would be part of the landscaping scheme. They would have to, when it says a plan to accompany it, it's actually the assessment of the sort of baseline of what's on the site at the moment and how they demonstrate that they can achieve the 10% betterment. That's then secured through the biodiversity net gain plan condition that is deemed to be on all relevant applications. So they'll need to satisfy that. So a biodiversity net gain plan will be submitted as part of this application. But they've demonstrated what they would do, as in through their landscaping plan, so then that will formally then be submitted, and then it's through the approval of that plan that we secure that betterment for the requisite 30-year period.
Thank you. I would like, if I may, just to sum up, and I think Councillor Paul Fellows will feel we've kind of done a big circle here, but I would like to support this application too. I think we can't get over the fact that we will have a desperate need for the type of care that this home will provide, and it does seem to be a very good design, well considered and sustainable, which is really good to see because not every application we get is. So that's very encouraging, and there's clearly been a real effort with regards to landscaping, protecting the biodiversity or improving on that. I'd normally go back to Paul, but because we've got so many variations, I've got some wording here, but if I may perhaps come back to Paul to second this, if you're happy to. I'd like to propose this application in accordance with the recommendations which are on page 39, plus the additional condition for travel plan and the submission of a new construction plan. The wording of the condition we will delegate to Emma in consultation with our chair and vice chair, and we will include within that work the review of the actual construction plan. Is that something that you'd be happy to second, Paul?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not overly convinced that there's a need for a travel plan. I hate to disagree with the Chair because normally you're very right on these things, but looking at the spaces that the care home will provide, the way they have gone into detail in what they have submitted to us, into how they're going to manage that, I'm not totally convinced that a travel plan will bring much positivity moving forwards. I'm happy to support it if the rest of councillors feel the need for a travel plan, but I think that's where I'm at with that. I do have reservations about it, so I mean, if you want to propose it, and then I'll allow someone else to second it, and I'll obviously vote accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mills?
I think with the travel plan, obviously the applicant has put in there that they will be looking over the next 2 years at travel plans, so perhaps persuading the staff to share a car if necessary, or how they can be sustainable to catch buses and everything. So putting it in as a condition is just to formalise that requirement to make it a sustainable development, that a lot of the staff will take active travel to work, which it would reduce the traffic on those roads for a start, and also increase the sustainability of that development. So I don't think it's an unnecessary condition. I think it is necessary just to confirm that that is going to be the situation.
Thank you. Councillor Bishnell.
Madam Chairman, happy to second your proposals. I agree with what you proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In that case, what I'd like to do is go to the votes. So All those in favour? Sorry, Councillor Harrison.
You had a proposal and a second up first. Are you negating that now, or?
Yeah, well, what I've said was I would come back because the proposal was made at the very beginning.
Didn't get seconded.
It wasn't immediate. It wasn't. I think you subsequently said you would second, but it was further down. It wasn't at that point. If you want, and the reason I'll explain the reason that I have proposed it is because of the complexity around all the conditions. And Councillor Fellows wasn't comfortable with the travel plan, so...
Yeah, in the light of where we've gone and where we're at, I'm more than happy to withdraw my proposal and support the proposals on the table in the light of what Councillor Milne was saying. And again, I do have doubts about trying to make people do things that we cannot achieve. It's impossible. But I totally accept as a way to move forwards to encourage people to think about it. I can support that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Fellows. So we now have a proposal on the table which I read earlier, if everyone can remember that. And Councillor Bishnell Singh has kindly seconded that proposal. So all those in favour, please raise your hands. And all those against? And those abstaining, please. Thank you. So that has been approved. I'm now going to move to a 15-minute break before we move on to our next application. As I mentioned, any members of the public requiring the amenities that are available, the toilet there or some water there. If anybody is staying, please let us know if you'd like a hot drink and we will get you a tea or coffee. Thank you for persevering with us. We're now moving on to agenda item 5. The time is now at 2:45 and we're continuing the meeting of the South Kesteven Planning Committee. So agenda item 5, which is application reference S241681. This is an application for the approval of reserved matters related to access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale for the convenience store as part of the local centre pursuant to outline planning permission S08 1231. I'd now like to hand over to Adam Murray to take us through the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As you say, this is an application for reserved matters approval pursuant to an outline plan permission S08 1231, which is the outline plan permission that covers the Poplar Farm estate on the northwestern edge of Grantham. The application has been referred to committee because it's a reserved matters application pursuant to an outline permission that was considered by Planning Committee originally. So in terms of the actual application site itself, as I say, it's part of land situated centrally within the Poplar Farm estate on the northwestern edge of Grantham. So you can see just on the aerial image in front of you here, this is the Poplar Farm estate. And you can just see to the western edge here, the first phases of the adjacent Rectory Farm estate, which is now being built out. Outline planning permission was granted in 2011 for a mixed-use urban extension, which was the Poplar Farm estate, and today around 670 dwellings have been completed. A master plan for the site was subsequently approved by condition in November 2011, which showed the indicative location of a proposed local centre, which is shown here just where the cursor is on the screen in front of you. And just for a point of reference, that is the primary school, which is now being built out to the west of the site. So it's always been envisaged that the land which currently stands vacant was the identified local centre to serve the whole site, and subsequently has been identified as being a useful local centre serving future residents of the Rectory Farm estate. Section 106 agreement that covers the outline plan and permission also included a requirement for retaining land for some of the local centre uses, so including a health centre and community centre. As I say, so that's safeguarded land within the local centre area for those future uses to come forward as part of the overall local centre proposals. So just in terms of a point of reference, so these are photos taken showing the site, and what's probably really important for members to note is there are quite substantial levels differences from Penryn Way, which is the road that you can see in front of you here. So just a point of order and clarification for members there. So it's referred to within the report as Penryn Way and Pennine Way. Depending on which side of the railway bridge you are is dependent on what the reference is. So on the Grantham side of the railway, it's Penryn Way, but on the Gonaby side, it's referred to as Pennine Way. So that just provides a bit of clarification about the two different references that are used interspersed throughout the report. What you've got here is quite substantial levels difference. So it's about a 1 in 12 levels difference from the point at the primary school on the western edge down to the Penryn Way frontage at the edge of the local centre. So to give some context here, you can see the gabion baskets that are retaining features for the residential properties to the north of the local centre site. And then you can see here on the left-hand side of the photo, the recently completed play area. And again, just in terms of context for members to bear in mind when we're looking at the proposed site layout, the plans that we're going to review in a moment show the proximity to the neighbouring properties. Those are the properties that you can see at the forefront of the plans in front of you here. As I say, the site itself relates to the local centre for the convenience store, which is only part of the local centre, which is on the northern side of the local centre, but it does extend across this entirety of undeveloped land at the moment on the screen in front of you. And again, just to give an indication in terms of the levels differences from the top of the site adjacent to the primary school, down looking eastwards across the Poplar Farm estate. So what you can see in the distance there is the strategic drainage that runs east to west across the entirety of the Poplar Farm estate. So in terms of the scheme in front of us today, as I say, it's an application for the approval of reserve matters for a convenience store as part of the local centre, and it's the first part of the proposals for the actual local centre itself. Access is to be taken directly from Penryn Way via what is already a sort of partially implemented point of access, with that junction already set aside onto Penryn Way. Pedestrian access to the convenience store is also proposed directly from Penryn Way. So what you can see is a stepped access in the southeastern corner from the convenience store, and then to the northeastern corner would be a level access providing suitability for wheelchair access, etc. The convenience store itself is set back from Penryn Way by about 13 metres, and then from the nearest boundary to the north is 1.3 metres to that nearest residential boundary. So just to give members context, from the images that we've just seen previously, this is the nearest property that fronts onto Penryn Way. The square building that you can see outlined here is a garage, detached garage that serves that property. And then just to the rear of the green open space, to the rear of the convenience store, you can see where the boundary steps away, which follows the line of the gabion basket retaining feature. So the nearest property that fronts onto the road that wraps around the estate is actually situated just slightly off the screen to the north here. The actual convenience store itself is an L-shaped structure with the front facing south, and importantly for members to note that the delivery and loading bay for the convenience store is to the west here, and that's a covered loading bay. So just to show the elevations in further context, I say it's a single-storey structure that measures a total of 7.8 metres to the ridge and is a total of 378 square metres of floor space, which also includes the servicing area. The building itself is constructed with red brick and clay pan tiles and has feature timber cladding detailing. And as I say, importantly to note, in terms of detail consideration of the proposals for members, as I say, that loading area to the western side of the store itself is a covered area, which then has a further 2.2 metre brick wall to the boundary, which would further enclose it. And again, just in terms of some colour illustrations to help members understand the proposals in a bit further detail. So in terms of the key issues for assessment of the scheme, it's the impact on the character and appearance of the area, impact on neighbouring amenity, and the adequacy of the access and parking arrangements. Full evaluations set out within the main report in front of you. Most importantly, as I say, the application scheme in front of us today is the first phase of a local centre that's intended to serve the wider Poplar Farm estate. Key consideration that officers and consultees have had throughout is ensuring that these proposals in isolation don't prejudice the remaining delivery of the local centre, so including that land set aside for the health centre and community facility. Officers are satisfied that the scheme does allow for those future uses to come forward. The scheme itself has been subject to engagement with the Design Pad Service at pre-application stage, and the scheme that's then in front of you now is an evolution from those early proposals, which has taken on board feedback that has been provided, and that's now reflected in the fact that the Urban Design Officer has no objections with the scheme that is now in front of us. In terms of amenity, key officer assessment throughout the scheme has been looking at the relationship between that potential use of the convenience store and the residential properties nearby. The officer assessment as set out within the report in full is that the layout coupled with the levels differences and the proposed boundary treatments does ensure that there's sufficient separation and a relationship between the convenience store, but that is then to be further supplemented by a condition looking specifically at a delivery management plan, which looks at both the actual delivery, routing of vehicles and how that would be arranged, but also more importantly the actual loading and unloading of produce for the store and how that can be managed to ensure that we mitigate the noise impacts as far as possible. And then details in terms of the hours of operation and external lighting are also to be secured by planning condition. In terms of the access, as I say, it is partially implemented with the actual junction itself already set aside from Penryn Way. LCC Highways has been consulted on the proposals and have confirmed that the access arrangements are sufficient for the actual construction and operation, and that sufficient parking provision has been provided to serve the needs of the store. So bringing that all together, the officer assessment as a scheme as a whole accords with the development plan, and there's no material considerations to indicate permission should be withheld, and therefore the recommendation to committee is to authorise the Assistant Director of Planning and Growth to grant the reserved matters consent subject to conditions set out within the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. We have speakers for the applicant. Is it Mr. Stuart Bisley? If you would like to come forward, please. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And we'll give you a 30-second warning. Thank you. And please hold forth for questions afterwards.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Stuart Bisley, representative of Norwich Hub, joint landowner and applicant of Poplar Farm, and I've been working on this development as lead on this joint venture project with the Buckminster Estate since 2008. The officer's report before you deals comprehensively with the application, so I won't dwell on the obvious merits that the plan has in bringing this local food store to Poplar Farm, but I would like to put it into some context. This is a milestone for the development of Poplar Farm by Buckminster and Norwich Hub that is bringing homes and investment to Grantham. As master developer, so far we've enabled 672 houses to be built, which currently 23% are affordable, and we have about 1,000 to go. Following grant of permission in 2011, we started building homes and infrastructure in 2013, and have continued on through recession, austerity, and the COVID pandemic, and a substantial increase in construction costs. Permission to build this convenience store enables us to move on to the next stage of creating an attractive local centre designed around a square. Once the access road and infrastructure serving the proposed shop is built, this will enable our other community benefits to come forward, such as the plots for the medical facility and community centre to be delivered by others. There is also keen interest on the site from a nursery school operator. There is also already much interest in the store from the expected range of retail occupiers, as well as some other smaller developers. However, it is quite possible that we in the Buckminster Estate will deliver the project ourselves and remain investors in the store. The intention is to ensure a quality finish with the store sitting neatly on the plot, which has been carefully designed in terms of layout and associated landscaping, to ensure that the future elements of the local centre are not prejudiced. A robust suite of pre-commencement and occupation conditions are recommended with which we concur. We are grateful to our architects framework, who are well experienced in this type of development and have designed and overseen the build of other similar stores in Grantham and the region. Members of the committee, I commend this application to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like? Councillor Ellis and then Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you. Do you have any EV parking spaces planned for on the site?
Yes, it is planned that there will be some EV points within the car parking area.
Can I ask how many, please? Can I ask how many?
Who goes first with the red button? Sorry. Yet to establish exactly how many there will be, but there will be EV park charging points, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 56, 5.2.2, the majority of residents are in favour. Do we have figures to back that claim up?
That's from the officer's report. There's a comment from the officer, so I'll defer, therefore, to the planning officer to deal with that.
To be fair as well, that is a quote from the comments from the Grantham Town Council as well. So it's not actual specific figures, that is word for verbatim the actual response that we received from the Town Council as a consultee. Just to give a bit of further insight in terms of consultee responses that we received directly from residents, we've actually only had 2 comments from members of the public on the application.
Thank you. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it all looks great. And could you tell us about what plans there are for solar panels and sort of sustainable electricity? Thank you.
So from sustainable solar panels and other green measures, they will largely be driven by policy and the requirements of the end user. So if so the requirements of whoever the occupier is, so that it will be driven by their own specific requirements of the end user and as their policy and building regulations will require.
Does anybody else have any questions? No. I think what I ought to do is declare. I've realised that myself and Councillor Harrison, we're both members of Grantham Town Council, but we've not been involved in this application in any way, and are not in any way predetermined. So I just think I ought to make that point. Sorry for the late disclosure. Thank you. So I just want to check that we have no more questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we now move on to debate. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is one that should definitely go through. It's needed up there. The shop's needed up there. I think a piece that maybe wasn't mentioned was what we discussed on the site visit about the height of the shop. So the ground is going to be levelled out. That shop is not going to be imposing on anything there or taken away from anything. And it's what's planned after that this development will permit to move on to the rest of the stuff. Part of the infrastructure, the access there is excellent, as good as you could get anywhere else. Nice wide roads down to it. The actual entrance is already there in place, ready to go up to the thing if you have a look on Google Earth. So for me, I'm happy to propose it as it stands. Obviously, discussion carry on.
Thank you very much. So I'll be looking for a seconder then for that. So Councillor Ellis, thank you. Did you want to say anything? Or you?
No, I think obviously in a residential area this big, it'd be great to have a shop there, so we reduce travel and hopefully we can have some more active travel within that residential area.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add, picking up, I think, the points that the Town Council are making, we are aware there are quite significant traffic issues down Barrowby Road, and this should certainly help the provision of this very, very much wanted and needed local amenity. I have to make that comment just looking at comments on social media that residents have made. So I think it is very welcome. I have a number of issues in my ward regarding the daily activities that occur around shops, especially where they're in close proximity to housing. But I feel that looking at this plan and discussion with officers, it looks like every effort's been made to really think this through carefully. So, for example, the car park is on the opposite side, and where the noise might occur, it's the opposite side from the housing. It has been thought through, and we've got internal area as well for the HGV. So, yeah, I totally support this application. Does anybody else have anything to say? No? In that case, shall we go to the vote? If I can ask all in favour, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. So this has been granted permission, subject to any conditions. Thank you. We will now be moving on to our final application, which is agenda item 6, application reference S242106, and I'll just wait for Councillor Ellis to relocate. Thank you. Thank you. So we're now moving forward then. This is application, as I said, S242106. This is for the installation of an air source heat pump and evaporator decks, erection of timber fencing and enclosure to the rear of the main leisure centre building at Grantham Mears Leisure Centre. And I now hand back to Adam Murray to talk us through. Thank you.
Thank you again, Madam Chairman. As you say, the application site here is the Grantham Mears Leisure Centre, located at Trent Road in Grantham, and the proposals for full planning permission for the installation of air source heat pumps with evaporator decks, which includes the installation of the heat pumps and evaporators themselves, as well as timber fenced enclosure. So that's the plan to show in the red line site area, as I say, including the actual Mears Leisure Centre as a whole. The proposals themselves are located on the eastern side of the site, so we'll show the plans in a minute. The actual air source heat pump is broadly located here on site on that eastern area. Just in terms of context for members, these are where the main areas of car parking are on the front and on the front side of the leisure centre, so it is very much on that rear side of the leisure centre. Public visibility itself is largely going to be restricted, therefore, to the footpath that runs along the rear of the leisure centre. So, as I say, that's a zoomed-in proposal here. Just as I say, given context, is on that rear side. So you're going to have a scheme which shows the actual air source heat pumps and evaporator compound here, surrounded by that timber enclosure, and the plant room again then within the building itself. And then just to show it in terms of the actual scale of the buildings, of the actual structures themselves, very much small scale structures of 15 metres wide and 5.2 metres in depth. Again, the plans in front of you just show them in terms of the overall context of the existing building, so very small scale and very subordinate in terms of the existing building itself. And again, just a detailed plan of the actual elevations themselves. In terms of the actual key considerations then for the proposal is that impact on the character and appearance of the area and impact on neighbouring amenity. As I mentioned, the actual heat pump structures themselves are located to the rear of the leisure centre, so not visually prominent, other than for those users of the footpath that runs to the rear. In any case, the small scale nature of the proposal and that timber screener helps to integrate it within the site to make sure it's not visually prominent and harmful to the character of the area. Likewise, the actual location of the structure and the units is adequately separated from the nearest properties to make sure that there's no unacceptable impacts in terms of noise. I've had no objections from any of the consultees, such as environmental protection, in relation to that point, and no concerns raised by Grantham Town Council. And therefore, the officer assessment is that the scheme accords the development plan as a whole, and there's no considerations to indicate permissions should be withheld. So therefore, the recommendation to committee is to authorise the Assistant Director of Planning to grant permissions subject to the conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have no speakers for this application, so we can move straight to the debate. Councillor Sawyer just beat Councillor Harrison by a second there. Do you want to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, two questions for Adam, if I may. Adam, why air source rather than ground source?
I suspect that's probably a question for the council as a landowner rather than us as a planning authority. Ultimately, we've got an application for an air source heat pump and we've got to consider its merits.
Second one, if I may, Chairman. Page 81, 6.7, is the BNG requirement a strict requirement for this?
Yeah, so as councillors are aware, biodiversity net gain is now a mandatory requirement on the vast majority of planning permissions, including this one. The applicants covered the requirements in terms of the actual requirements for a planning application for the submission of the metric, which establishes the baseline details. There is a mandatory pre-commencement planning condition which secures the actual details themselves of how that net gain is to be achieved. So I appreciate we've got a holding objection at the moment from the Wildlife Trust, but that is adequately addressed by that pre-commencement condition that is imposed on all planning permissions.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Again, Chair, I can see no issue with this. I'm happy to propose.
Thank you very much. And do you have a seconder? I will second that, Madam Chairman. Thank you. So, Councillor Bisnell Singh, does anybody else want to make any comment on this? Just to add that this is in addition to the solar panelling, which we previously approved. So in that case, if we move to the vote, which would be to grant permission for this application subject to conditions, and that would be including addressing the concern from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust, which is still in the pipeline, I understand.
Yeah, so it's covered as an informative on the actual decision notice itself, because the pre-commencement condition is a statutory requirement, so it's covered legally as opposed to needing to be included as a written pre-commencement condition on the decision notice.
Thank you very much, that's great. In which case we'll go to the vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hands. So that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that has been approved. Thank you. I will now move to close the meeting. However, so I'll just close the meeting. Please do not all go. Thank you.